Welcome to Hip Hop Now Podcast. If you're from the future, you know what to do. Get your ass out of here. Don't disrespect the legend. Hip hop is here to stay. Let's get right into the business. What up, y'all? I am your host, Vegas, and this is Hip Hop Now Podcast, a podcast specifically designed to keep you caught up on all things hip hop, music, and culture that happen throughout the week. Big shout out to supporters, producers, patrons over at patreon.com/hiphopnow. And if you would like to support this podcast, support the production of this podcast, support what's coming to this podcast production-wise, visit the link in the description of this episode. Doesn't matter if you're watching on YouTube. It doesn't matter if you're listening on your favorite podcasting app. Show some love. And through that portal, you can also throw me some ideas for shows, special shows. Like if you want me to talk specifically about an album, a time in hip hop, whatever it may be. That is the place to get down because they brought you the video version of this podcast. Let me just soapbox for a minute. 50 years of hip hop. I've been doing this podcast for a very long time. And I got to a point in time right before the 50th year of hip hop where I was like, yeah, it might be time to stop. And it was only in audio form. And I had been asked before, yo, why don't you do a video version or do some kind of video or something? And, I dabbled here and there and it didn't really make sense at times. And, I didn't have the equipment, but the Patreon supporters kind of came through in some regards. I was able to purchase a couple little bit, items here and there to kind of bolster up the production of the podcast in video form. And, that continues. So again, patreon.com/hiphopnow is the place to go to get down with that. Also, no, I have merch, t-shirts, hoodies, stickers, whatever, logo items. Check it out. The link is in the description of this episode. Big shout out to hiphopdx.com. You hiring? Allhiphop.com. The Source Magazine. Yeah, them too. .com and a couple of places where I'm getting some of these stories from. Let's get right into the business. So November 9th, 2023 is Wu and Tribe Day. I know what New York said. Today's officially Wu-Tang Day. November 9th is Wu-Tang Day. And that's cool. But hip hop heads know. November 9th, 1993 was a special day for hip hop. It could sort of serve as a barometer for those that talk that and you ask them what they were doing at that time, because most hip hop heads were buying A Tribe Called Quest's third album, Midnight Marauders, and Wu-Tang Clan's debut album, Into the Wu, 36 Chambers. Two bona fide classic albums. I know people say, yo, you can't really call it a classic when you hear it, but sometimes you just know something special, really special as you're listening to it. You know it then and there. Everything you hear, everything is coming together perfectly. And that was the thing for both of those albums. I did not do a special on it because during the 25th anniversary, I did a whole podcast, which was only in audio form, but you could also listen to it here on YouTube. I reposted that just so people could check out my thoughts, because that was my thoughts kind of fleshed out around that time about my experience. But just for you who are listening today, in 2023, celebrating the 30th anniversary of both of these classic albums, my experience was just as a hip hop head. I knew that both of these albums were dropping on the same date, and typically around that time, because I didn't have a lot of money, maybe you had some bread, but I ain't have it. Okay, I ain't have it like that. What I did was I literally saved my money so I could be able to afford both albums on the day it released. I didn't have like a portable CD player. I don't even think my stereo played CDs. My stereo at the time was like tape deck and vinyl. And I kind of used the vinyl, to do my little wiggle wiggles as far as mixing. Um, but I bought both cassettes that day. And I remember like when I got them, it was like, I was hyped because Low End Theory is my favorite Tribe album. So here's the sequel. And Award Tour had me amped. But then there was the Woo. Protect Your Neck was crazy. Method Man was crazy. And then I had already heard like unreleased versions of Can It Be and Cream. And I was like, I don't know what this is, but I gotta have this album day and date. And the biggest dilemma for me walking out of Beach Street in Brooklyn, y'all already know that was my spot, to get on the B52 to go back to Gates Ave was, which one am I going to listen to first? And I wound up listening to Tribe first because it was highly anticipated for me, right? They already had a track record with this group. They were basically my favorite group at this point, besides, EPMD. But I just remember saying, yo, I got to listen to this first. I got to listen to this first. And I was blown away by the production, by, the rhymes, just everything, Large Pro feature, everything. Lyrics to Go, God Lives Through. God Lives Through is probably my favorite. And I was just on the bus like, man, they did it again. This album is better. Like, but in the back of my mind was like, I can't, when I get home, I'm going to listen to the Woo in the crib. And I popped in the tape, and Shame on the N-word, because it's a family podcast. We don't cuss and all that. Shame on the N-word came on. And I just remember feeling like it was Shame on the N-word. And then when I heard Clan in the Front, because remember, I had already heard a couple of joints already. I was like, I don't know who these dudes are. RZA, this is my first experience with his production. But everything about this album is legendary. You know what I'm saying? And I wasn't even a big Ghostface fan around this time because I didn't really like him that much. Obviously, Cuban Link came out, and then that changed that quickly. Or really Heaven and Hell when I heard that joint. But nevertheless, I liked them on Can It Be, don't get it twisted. But I just remember listening to the album, and the crazy part was I started to feel like I was listening to the Woo more. I was listening to the Tribe joint, and I loved both. But the Woo joint was something I hadn't experienced or heard from before. And it's all these group members and all these references to Kung Fu movies. It was just like, and it was all grimy in comparison. The sound was just grimy. Like you could tell they were in somebody's crib recording this. It just classic. Now, obviously, Midnight Marauders, after, I bumped the Woo back to back to back for so much of my room, had to put that Tribe on. And it was just a magical time for a hip hop head. And obviously, throughout the years, there are dates throughout hip hop history where you had some dope albums, even classic albums, drop all on the same day. But it was like there was nothing else dropping. There probably was some things that dropped that day, but it was everybody had these two, or they bought one and their homie bought the other, and they would trade and all that. But it was like that. It was a magical time. So if you've heard about these albums or you heard this story, just take yourself back to a time. Think about a time where music released on Tuesdays and CDs were around, but po folk like me was still getting cassettes. Actually, I think the cassettes that I purchased are actually back there. Let's check. Try to be real quick. I don't think my Woo joint is back here. Yeah, maybe we'll splice that into the video at one point so you can see when I find it. But nevertheless, man, just a dope time in hip hop. So 30 years of um, Wu-Tang debut album and Tropical Quest's Midnight Marauders. Go out, listen, cop the vinyl. I had Wu's debut on vinyl because I only collect the classics. I can't do like buying everything because I ain't got no space for all of that. And I already have the music. But I don't have Midnight Marauders on vinyl. I have Low End Theory because I said that's my favorite, right? But now I'm starting to feel like I need to make that happen. So there you have it. Lil Kim has a new book coming out. Or not a new book. I guess it's her only book called The Queen Bee. And it's obviously about her life story. But she said it will be the first book to outsell the Bible. Now, that's a pretty bold claim, but she's a rapper. That's what rappers do. Rappers are like boxers. I'm the best. I don't care who has all the belts. I'm the best. And I understand she's hyping it up, but honestly, I don't even think she needs to say that because some of the things that she mentioned about the book are probably enough to get most people to buy it, pre-order it, whatever, because I don't buy a lot of books. And I don't always get through them in record time. I have to be so locked into what's there that I just keep going and going and going and going, and then the book is done, right? Like the Dilla book, which I still haven't finished, but it is good. It's a good book. And the Rakim book, even Prodigy's book, they're books that I just kind of just ran through. And when I heard Lil Kim was dropping a book, and some of the things she talked about that will be in there, I was like, I think I need to get this one to read. And mainly because just like with Rakim, there was a time where Rakim didn't do many interviews. So therefore it was like, sure, when he would do interviews, you would hear some of the same things, right? The things you already know if you're a hip hop head about the music, about his history. But to know that he had an autobiography coming out, I was like, oh, wow, I'll get a deeper look at his life and his accounts, right? And I think the same could be said for some other artists who haven't necessarily not shed or addressed, but talked about everything in their life and their career in detail in every interview or on every album. So there was a little intrigue there for me with Rakim. It's the same with Lil Kim. You don't always see her granting interviews. And a lot of times we're at the mercy of the interviewer's questions. And sometimes you already know, some of these cats ask the same dumb questions all the time, and you don't get any depth out of these interviews. So a book is intriguing. This is on hiphopdx.com. It says, Lil Kim claims her Queen Bee book will surpass sales of the Bible. And here's some quotes from her. And that's crazy. And the thing is, it's like the Bible, like I don't take that lightly. I already know that, but it's like some crazy ish going on behind the scenes. I guess she's referring to what's in the book. The Bible is the highest selling book of all time and is believed to have sold between 5 and 7 billion copies. We already know, Lil Kim, you're not breaking that record. Stop it, okay? Here's another quote. You have to be really careful when you deal with these book companies because they try to like literally take advantage of you. Let's get to the parts where she talks about, well, let's just do this. The Queen Bee, which is the name of the book, is expected to be released in March of 2024. According to a press release, it will deal with her complicated, high-profile relationships, the misogynistic industry she fought to change through sex positivity, the challenging double standards of self-image and beauty in the spotlight, and the momentous act of loyalty that ultimately landed her in prison. She also Well, the Queen Bee will also see Kim's take on her romantic relationship with the Notorious B.I.G., which is alleged to have been fraught with domestic abuse. Oh boy. This is going to be crazy. And in a lot of ways, I'm not look, Biggie's my favorite rapper, but I'm not surprised to hear her say that. And if she wanted to capitalize off of him, she would have done it a long time ago. Lil Kim is her own star. Like when Big died, it was kind of like, it wasn't like, oh, well, we got this offshoot. No, Kim was a star in her own right. And I think it's similar to what we've learned about Big Pun, right? You know, he abused his wife. You know what I'm saying? And for me, as a fan of his music, you know, that takes a little bit away, right? Like, not like he's rapping about, you know, he ain't Father MC, right? like he's rapping about the opposite of what he's doing. But in the same sense, you think about it and it's just crummy, you know. Sometimes, you know, when you learn more about the celebrities, whether it's actors or musicians or whatever that you admire, and then you find out that you wouldn't like this person if they weren't this, and you found out all this other information about them. I try to separate from time to time. Like, I was a big R. Kelly fan, but it was just too much to separate the art, especially when he didn't separate the art from his personal life. It was embedded in his music. So it made it easy for me to just be like, I can't rock with that dude no more. But with Big, it's going to be complicated because, for one, he's not here to defend himself. So we don't know what is what. But I can't see a reason why Kim would wait this long just to, you know, disparage him after basically saluting him and bigging him up, and he'd been dead for forever at this point. So we'll see, because we don't know what she's going to say, but we just know that she said what she just said. And I'm interested in all of it, especially everything that was mentioned there. Like, I think that's pretty dope, because when you look at the industry now and all these female rappers, a lot of which don't really have skill, they just naked on the stage and they just talking about sex. That's not what Lil Kim was. Lil Kim was a little bit more than that. There was a little bit more substance to what she had to say. Some of those things were there, obviously, because I'm not knocking these women for talking about something that happens every day. Sex sells. And I mean, you got free porn on the internet, right? And it ain't blocked and all that. So they're not out of line, but it's a different conversation when you talk about that time and what Foxy and Kim probably went through trying to liberate women in a art form that was dominated by males, that was misogynistic, that was double standard out. And honestly, that's why we liked Kim and Foxy, because they broke that mold. I don't have to put a bunch of baggy stuff on in order for dudes to like me. I'm going to be sexy. I'm going to spit. Like, come on, man. Like that. Let's just not ignore that. So March 2024, the Queen Bee is coming out. I think I'm going to pre-order just so I don't forget. I already got it saved on my Apple books. So we'll see what it says, you know, because at the end of the day, you can have a bunch of things in there and it could still be a terrible read. So we'll see. But I definitely plan to review it for this podcast. And lastly, so I did an episode not that long ago talking about the upcoming album from Meek Mill and Rick Ross entitled Too Good to Be True. And I talked about my hype for it. I talked about hearing, I think, 3 songs at the time, 3 or 2 songs at the time, and feeling like I ain't heard a dud yet. I'm ready. I'm excited for this album. Now, whereas this is my impressions, because when I record this, it's only been a couple of hours since the album dropped. But what I like to do is listen in the gym in the morning. I don't stay up at night and, tweet and call it a classic like y'all. Uh, then at another point in the day, I'll listen, and then I'll listen again just to kind of confirm my thoughts and my impressions. And just so you don't have to wait for those who just want to know straight up. I think it's good. I don't think it's one of the best of the year. I think it's one of the better albums of the year, but I think if you know both artists, you won't hear anything new. Production-wise, content-wise, flow-wise, it's exactly what you think it will be. And that doesn't mean that's a bad thing if you like what they do. But if you don't, or you're kind of tired of this album's not going to move the needle for you at all. So let's just get into what I think about it in detail. This album is 17 tracks deep. Comes in right at 1 hour, which is perfect for me. The lead single Shaq and Kobe is here, but also the remix featuring Shaq. I've never heard that one, and I don't think I want to hear it. I like the Shaq and Kobe song. I can't hear Shaq on it, but he's probably dope on it. So let me not say that. I mean, I heard it, but the various features, a lot of R&B on here. Tiana Taylor, The Dream is on here. Jeremiah is on here. French Montana's on here. Fabulous. Cool and Dre did some tracks. And when I heard the Shaq and Kobe joint, I was like really into it. Like, yo, this is dope. This is a great idea, right? Like, because we would do a Meek album and we would kind of do a Rick Ross album. It's 50 years of hip hop. Why not? But then they get together and put an album out, and you kind of get, like, if you've been listening to their albums in recent years, you kind of get a blend of what their albums typically sound like when they're separate. So I thought that was kind of commendable because I never felt like anything was off, really. There are joints that sound like Rick Ross. There are joints that sound like Meek would have them. There's one record, and I can't remember which one it is, but where I think it's some old Meek vocals because he sounds really young on it. Like, it took me a minute because when you listen to Shaq and Kobe, and Meek likes to yell. We know that. But when you listen to the Shaq and Kobe joint, you recognize that's Meek today, the way he sounds. But then this other joint, there was something about his voice that made me feel like this got to be a older track from when, like, he first signed, not the debut, but, just younger Meek, because it sounded different. Wasn't a bad thing. It was just noticeable. And it made me wonder, like, oh, well, maybe this is like a combination of records they recorded a while ago and they were in the vault, and then they just added a couple of joints. Now, there are a number of songs on this album that got that feel and that type of beat from the record Shaq and Kobe, which is what drew me in. Like, oh, this joint is hot. Like, I like it. I love the feel of it. I love the swag talk that, they both tend to do. But for those who don't like beats that sound like trap, because Future's on here also, Wale's on here as well. But anybody who doesn't want to hear anything that sounds remotely like trap, you're going to be disappointed. Because in between the boom bap sounding, big hip hop record sounding, boom, boom, there's the trap. Now, I don't mind trap music. And in particular, I like what Meek has done in his last maybe 2 projects, where he takes a familiar sample, typically associated with a 90s hip hop record that you can recognize, and they flip it into a trap beat without losing the essence of that bass line. And I think it's dope. I love it. Every time they do it, I think it's dope. So I would say, just to wrap this up, that this is probably one of those albums I'm just going to keep listening to because I like it. But I can't, when I think about the albums I have in my top 5, like right now, and we getting real close to the time where, you know, we solidify that 5 and the rest are just honorable mentions, it's difficult to take this and place it amongst those albums because the albums that I typically end up with at the end of the year are so much more than beats and rhymes. Sometimes there's that one album, that one project that's just the bars and the beats are so potent and there's no concept. They're just talking about the same thing. But I feel like it's infectious. It's always one that makes my top 5. But the rest are always, you know, like, for example, like Killer Mike's Michael. Like, that's what I'm talking about. Like, real quality work, like quality, like a shirt, right? Like the threading or sheets, right? Like the threading, we got a 6 million. They don't really have this. Or maybe they have it for rich people. 6 million thread sheet, right? Detail upon detail upon detail upon detail. That's typically what's in my top 5, right? It's not just the production. It's how everything comes together. This album isn't that by a long shot. It's just what you expected from these two as a group. So there you have it. What do you think about Meek Mill and Rick Ross's collaboration on this new album, Too Good to Be True? Leave your comments in the comment section below. Are you looking forward to Lil Kim's book? Are you looking forward to learning some of the things about not only her life, but let's just say it, you know, the cosmetic surgery and the abusive relationships she was in? Leave your comments in the comment section below. Subscribe to this channel. Hit that like button. Subscriptions, subscribing, and sharing helps grow the podcast, helps grow the audience. So I need you to come through for me. I just hit my hand on the whatever. But until next time, y'all, I'm not a critic. I'm a fan. Peace.